Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Noah Knows History. Today we are going to be covering the Roman Empire, and more notably, Julius Caesar with his impeccable cheekbones and his cracked hairline. Our story takes place in 100 BCE in the Subura district of Rome. The Subura district of the Roman capital was essentially the Roman equivalent of modern-day Manhattan. It was a very low-income, highly densely populated area of the Roman capital. Caesar himself, born Gaius Julius Caesarus, was born to a noble family that was neither rich in prestige nor in wealth. For most of his life until 60 BCE, Caesar took on a variety of political jobs to gain nobilitas, a bit of prestige in the Roman political quarters. Everything in the Roman government at the time was controlled through the Senate, so these political methods were his way of garnishing respect and making members of the Senate like him so that he would have more power in the politics. A couple of these jobs being a governorship in northern Spain that he held for a little while, and also serving as an aedile in the city of Rome itself. Aediles were kind of like these public affairs officials that would create public games. They'd schedule the chariot matches, Colosseum matches, all the type of things that we like to think of the Romans for doing, these public displays of brutality and honestly these kind of barbaric things that we look at the Roman Empire for. I know it's super cool to look at the Roman Empire like, woo, Rome, yeah. But in reality, the Roman Empire was super barbaric, like Colosseum matches, having slaves fight, a bunch of stuff. But Caesar the Goat was managing all that for a little bit, up until 60 BCE, when he formed the first triumvirate with Pompey, a very accomplished military general within the Roman legions, and Crassus, a very wealthy merchant among the Roman higher class. The reason that this alliance was created between these three men is that by covering each of their bases, you had Caesar, a very charismatic political figure, Pompey, a very accomplished military general, and then Crassus, a very wealthy merchant. The alliance allowed for each three of these members to essentially bypass the Roman Senate while essentially relying on the skills they didn't have, other members of the alliance did have. Caesar used this political alliance to, like I said earlier, completely bypass the Roman Senate. He secured himself war declaration rights and a governorship in Gaul. This allowed him to completely bypass the Senate, declare war on the Gallic tribes, and try to claim more land for himself. Some of the major battles of the Gaulish campaigns being the Battle of the Sabis River, in which the Romans narrowly won the battle and Caesar himself got mixed up in the fighting. That part of the campaign resulted in an estimated 59,000 members of the Gallic tribes being killed. And then also we have the final Battle of Alesia, in which an outnumbered Caesar defeated Vercingetorix, ending all Gallic resistance in the area of modern-day France. And then after using the power of the triumvirate, he got the ability to govern all the new land that he had conquered. And basically, Caesar was just running amok. Politically, he had just gained himself a new governorship. Him and the rest of the members of the triumvirate were essentially doing whatever they want. And this began to scare a couple people. Pompey, one of the members of the triumvirate, fearing Caesar's power with the support of the Senate, tried to overthrow him in 48 BCE. Caesar defeated Pompey and then, using resources from his Gallic governorship, launched a coup against the Senate, which lasted until 45 BCE and took over the empire, eventually being named dictator for life. This essentially was the final twist of Caesar's knife into the Roman Senate. Caesar and the rest of the members of the triumvirate had spent years essentially just abusing their power. I say abusing their power, it wasn't like Caesar and the members of the triumvirate were doing anything like crazy. I mean, they were. Obviously, Caesar was securing power for himself, but for the most part, he didn't have this crazy aspiration to overthrow the empire or anything until after the Senate had proven that they had aspirations against him. Caesar was bypassing the Senate, and the other members of the triumvirate got a little bit uncomfortable. So Pompey, fearing this, tried to declare a civil war. It didn't work out. I believe he got his head cut off whenever he came to, I think the story goes actually that he fled to Egypt, and then Ptolemy VII of Egypt welcomed him and killed him and cut his head off. And then when Caesar showed up in Egypt, specifically Alexandria, he was like super shocked to see Ptolemy there with like Pompey's head, and he kind of had this like self-reflection moment, because despite the fact that they were fighting and the fact that Pompey betrayed him, Caesar actually still really liked Pompey. Do with that information what you will. But essentially, after defeating him, Caesar bypassed bypassed the Senate, bypassed the Civil War, crowned himself dictator for life, ending the triumvirate, and being a dictator. The Senate still existed, but for all inclusive parts, the Senate did not matter, and Caesar was on his own. After being named dictator, Caesar launched the Agia Republicus, which redistributed lands to a lot more of Rome's poor population, and also rewarded successful generals for good military service. He also used a lot of public funding to rebuild parts of the empire that were destroyed during Pompey's coup d'etat, such as Carthage, parts of Greece, mainly parts of the Eastern Empire that were destroyed. These land reforms overall made Caesar not only very popular with the military, as he was rewarding generals for good service, but it also overall made Caesar very popular with the people, as he was building more homes, he was farming more fertile land, overall just doing a lot for Rome and its people. After helping her defeat her brother Ptolemy VII in 47 BCE at the Battle of the Nile, Ptolemy died and Caesar had Cleopatra named Queen of Egypt. That seems kind of random, but that will be a bit more relevant in a little bit. But through doing this, Caesar was able to secure an alliance with Cleopatra, which is very important. Egypt at the time, during this time of the Roman Empire, was one of the biggest food sources for the Roman Empire. A large percent of Rome's food and fertile land came from Egypt. So securing this alliance was once again huge for a Caesar who was in the middle of installing his Agia Republicus and all these major political and land reforms. Shortly after this, we're going to get to the meat and the gravy now. History fans, get the popcorn out. We are getting to the assassination of Caesar in 44 BCE, a plot started by a group of 60 Roman senators known as the Liberators, mainly led by Marcus Brutus and Gaius Longinus. The assassins lured Caesar to the theater of Pompey, in which they stabbed him 23 times. Caesar, it's noted in a lot of poems that Caesar's last things that he saw were the face of Brutus, his best friend and long-standing friend in politics, and he just accepted his fate. The plot from the Liberators was a success. They did kill Caesar, but it was not a success in the way that they probably hoped it would be, as Caesar was very popular with the people. He had a son-in-law, or an adopted son, who also liked him a lot. Shortly after the death of Caesar, we would see a civil war break out between the Liberators faction, aka the senators, and then also the faction of Octavian, the adopted son of Julius Caesar. During this civil war, we see the emergence of a second triumvirate between Octavian, Mark Antony, one of Caesar's biggest supporters and generals, and Lepidus. The second triumvirate was once again, just Octavian's way of copying his dad and doing exactly what he thought he needed to do to gain some political capital in Rome. He formed his own triumvirate and continued chasing down the rest of the Liberators. One of the most major defeats being the Battle of Philippi in 42 BCE, in which the second triumvirate squared off with the forces of Brutus and Cassius in Greece. Both sides pulled up to the fight with absolutely massive hosts of men, both sides estimating to be anywhere between 102 and 108,000 for both sides. So overall, minimum 200,000 men involved in this battle. And the battle itself was very even until Cassius's army had started falling back a little bit, and he had heard a false report of Brutus's death, leading to him committing suicide. Very shortly after this, his army very quickly broke down. Brutus, after hearing this, was completely demoralized. He started losing his side of the battle, and then shortly after this, we see him commit suicide as well. This would overall be the end of the Civil War of the Second Triumvirate, with the Civil War being finished and Caesar officially being avenged by his adopted son and Rome's most famous playboy, Mark Antony. The Second Triumvirate consolidated their power with Octavian governing most of the empire, but allowing Mark Antony to govern over eastern territories such as parts of Egypt and so on. During this governorship, he would start a love affair with Cleopatra. You know what they say, when in Rome, Mark Antony is Rome's finest playboy. follow it. Of course, the moment he stepped foot in Egypt, he got the hots for Cleopatra. That's how every story goes with the Romans. After this, you'd think the triumvirate would be a pretty close-knit group. I mean, Octavian has just been named leader of Rome at this point. Him and Mark Antony and Lepidus all together worked to overthrow the liberators and to avenge Caesar. But you'd be wrong. Just like the first triumvirate, Octavian and Mark Antony had a little square off 2 years after the peace of the Civil War in 40 BCE. That only ended when Mark Antony married Octavian's sister Octavia. Despite this, Mark Antony would continue to sleep with Cleopatra. She would end up bearing him 3 kids all in the time while he was married to Octavia. So as you probably guessed, this pissed off Octavian quite a lot. He knew what was going on in Egypt. He knew that Mark Antony was stepping out on his sister, and he was not a fan of that. Until eventually a full-blown war broke out between the two in 31 BCE. At the end of that year, Antony and Cleopatra were defeated at the Battle of Actium. Quick little side note, the Battle of Actium to this day is the largest, if not one of the largest, naval battles that has taken place in human history. Both sides used up to 500 ships. I believe Octavian's host was around 400 convoy ships, while Cleopatra and Mark Antony were around 500, so give or take around 900 ships involved in this battle. But to this day, it is one of the biggest naval battles in human history, and it's in 31 BCE. Like, this is prime Roman Empire. And it's, to this day, still one of the biggest naval battles, if not the biggest naval battle in human history. Not to mention, Octavian's side of the host was led by Marcus Agrippa, who is like the absolute goat of Roman generals. Absolute mad lad. You can only imagine what this dude was getting up to with 400 ships at his disposal. I don't even want to know what the battle looked like. You can actually still go to the Mediterranean Sea today, and I believe you can see, like, you can do a scuba expedition and see a lot of the old sunken Roman quequiremes and quiremes and all those other, like Greek type ships, Carthage type ships that they used to use during the Peloponnesian War and all that type of stuff. But after getting his butt completely whooped by Marcus Agrippa, Mark Antony and Cleopatra fled back to Egypt, where Mark Antony killed himself, and then shortly after, Cleopatra also killed herself. Kind of awkward. We're noticing a trend with all of these Roman people is that they like to kill themselves once their plots get discovered. With all of his rivals either being dead or hiding somewhere in Gaul, Octavian had completely secured undisputed control over Rome and its politics. Shortly after returning back to the capital, to the beautiful city of Rome, we see Octavian be crowned the first emperor of Rome. This was a very big deal, as not even Caesar himself had managed to be crowned emperor. For the first time in Rome's history, we see an actual emperor sit upon the throne of Rome. And then shortly after receiving his title, we would also see Octavian be given the graceful name Augustus by the Senate, Augustus being Latin for magnificent or great. And overall, we would see no cease to the crazy politics of Rome at this time. That's where we are going to leave it for today's video. Believe me when I tell you that Rome's politics did not get any more or any less crazy, stabby, and confusing than the time of Caesar and Octavian. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you guys will tune into the next one. Peace.